Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here, Commissioner in the car. This is Tuesday, and it is, I keep forgetting the dates when I do this, Tuesday, May 2nd. Welcome to May, everybody. And today's Commissioner in the car, we're going to talk about two things: the New York State budget and a wrap-up of the hearing process and court process for the Onondaga County Board of Elections. So let's talk about the New York State budget. And the budget is still being voted on, but there is plenty of good news for county boards of elections in the budget, and as well as state board of elections and public campaign finance. So I'll go down the list of what is in the proposed budget and the good news that it brings to the to elections overall. Now, I'm just going to put a caveat out there. Not everything that we wanted in the budget got done, but that's never the case, right? You always ask for way more, and you hope that you can get some. One of the things that, some of the things that were left out were any program bills. What are program bills? Those are legislation that is normally passed in the legislature that is sometime included in the budget. You may notice that bail reform was part of this year's budget. That's normally passed outside of the budget, but it was part of this year's budget because the governor wanted to force changes with the legislature. On the election side, the budget, they took out any of the reforms. That doesn't mean that these reforms won't happen, and I'll be talking about that in a future Commissioner in the Car. Probably next week, about the reforms that I want to get done before the end of the year. It isn't in the budget. So those didn't get in the budget, but there's a lot of stuff they got in the budget. Let's get straight to what the county boards got. County boards will be getting a new $15 million grant for capital improvement. That is going to be huge for counties like ours that are going through major changes to their voting equipment. We're getting new voting machines, we're getting new polling places, and this will be $600,000 approximately, I think. I'm estimating of how much Onondaga County will get in this, what is called a capital grant or a tier grant. And that will help offset some of this local money that we are spending bonding to get our capital project done. So that's big news there. Also, $4 million is going towards postage, and that's reimbursing county boards for postage for the prepaid postage for absentee ballots. You no longer have to put a stamp on an absentee ballot. You no longer have to put a stamp on an absentee ballot application. All of that we can mail stuff right out to you, and you can have it come back. So that is pretty good news. They also reauthorized a lot of the previous grants. There are some grants out there where the county boards haven't been able to spend the money yet. A lot of times what happens with this is that they're waiting for a bunch of grants to accumulate so they can do big purchases instead of little piece by piece. And this will also help a lot of those boards that were able to either spend local dollars on stuff and keeping the grants for a rainy day, or are doing major projects like us at the Onondaga County Board of Elections. So that is a really good amount of good news for county boards of elections. On the New York State Board of Elections, I can tell you that the budget that they requested was approved. And it is without any cuts. And this is, not always been the case. So there is new staffing, and to plump up the New York State Board of Elections, get more directors, more people to be able to handle all the burdens that we're giving there. And, the State Board of Elections is our big brothers and big sisters at the county board. So that is really, really good news. Also, on the public campaign finance, I know a lot of people want it to be fully funded this year, but there is such good news about what they did do. Not only did they fund the administrative costs, they created 56 new positions for the public campaign financing. It didn't fund the actual program itself, but that's because the money for that will come in next year's budget. We don't actually start expending money on the public campaign finance until next year. So that, and I know a lot of advocates that have been on my Zoom majority wanted to talk about how, that, and wanted it funded this year. Well, it's not being funded this year, but the money is going to be spent to next year. So there's plenty of time to fund that money in next year's budget. But I think it is significant that they put in money to hire staff. And there's 56 different staffers that are going to be running that public campaign finance. It's a huge investment, and I think it's a signal that the legislature and governor wanted to send, that they are fully invested in this program. They didn't delay it. They didn't do anything like that. People are being signed up for it. I actually think it's a pretty good piece of news for the public campaign finance. So overall, the budget, I think, did pretty well. I wanted $20 million. That's what I testified for. $10 million for aid to localities and $10 million for capital investment. The legislature opted for $15 million in capital investment, nothing in aid to localities. That is okay. When you ask for 20 and you get 15, it's better than getting 0. And I'm pretty happy with how this all turned out. We will see how it all turns out next year. Now there are some, bills like minimum staffing and other board of full-time commissioners. There's a lot of other things, and I'm going to go over that next week. So, but I wanted to focus on the budget this week and all the good news in the budget. Will that mean that, we can't hire new staff this year, but we may be able to hire new staff next year? We're also going to be able to offset some local dollars, which hopefully we can then encourage the county boards of elections to invest in personnel as we offset the local dollars for capital improvement for these aging voting machines. A lot of counties have machines that are 20 years old, like ours are like 20-year-old technology. So this amount of money is going to help us definitely complete our capital project and have a wonderful, new voting system to be ready for 2024. So I'm really excited about that. The other part of the commissioner in a car I wanted to talk about is hearings. I did a post on this on Friday, and I want to go into the hearings and why some of the people were either kept on the ballot or thrown off the ballot. But a little caveat here before I get into this. None of this is to shame anybody. I'm not trying to thumb my nose in their either defeats, either the objectors' defeats or the candidates' defeats. But one of the reasons why I like to do Commissioner in a Car is I like to educate the public. And I think there's a lot of lessons in here for objectors and for candidates on things that you should or shouldn't do when filing petitions, which you can avoid. So the reason I talk about it is I hope to give people a sense of all the things that go into these hearings and what you need to do to avoid some of the outcomes that we had here. So and I'm going to kind of lump them together in in kind of like similar situations. So we had a couple of two offices that were thrown off the ballot because they were obviously short on signatures. County Legislative District 11 for the Democrats, and Ian Hunter's petitions for school board for the Republicans. These petitions were turned in by the candidates, and they were obviously short on signatures. However, the boards of elections in Onondaga County, we do not actually count signatures when they come in because there's an assumption of validity. However, I think that gets people to think, oh, well, maybe they'll be able to slip one by the goalie. Well, the other side is always counting. And they were able to put in objections that threw those candidates off the ballot. We then had about 3 Democratic candidates that were thrown off the ballot because they had signatures on their petitions that were not members of the Democratic Party, that reduced the number of valid signatures after objections to below the minimum threshold, and they were thrown off the ballot. And that was County Ledge District 5 with Dwayne Main, Common Council District 4, Hassan Bloodworth, and Common Councilor at Large, Raquan Pride Green. All of those had signatures on their petitions that were not members of the Democratic Party. Once the objections made, and in the cases of Hassan Bloodworth and Raquan Pride Green, there was a lot of them. With Dwayne Main, it was only 4, but he only had, it was only 5, but he only had 1 signature over the minimum when he filed his signature. So if you go just 1 or 2 signatures below the minimum after objections, you are thrown off the ballot. So Dwayne and Hassan and Raquan Pride Green were thrown off the ballot because of those. Raquan Pride Green also had a situation where he had a witness who was going around collecting signatures for him that was also not a registered Democrat. So that threw off lots of signatures. Again, when you're getting signatures, you need to make sure that your person that you're getting signatures for are on are in the party that you are walking with. I'm kind of going over the ones that were thrown off the ballot, and then I'll go over the ones that were kept on the ballot. In County Legislature 16, there was a WFP candidate, David Knapp. Not the David Knapp who's a legislator on the Republican side. He's actually head of the Working Families Party. They put in signatures, but Mr. Knapp does not live in the County Legislative 16th District. And why is that important? Usually, you don't need to live in the district you're running for. We have a congressman like that with Brandon Williams. But sometimes you have to move in by election day or after election day. And in the case of Brandon Williams, he actually doesn't have to move in at all because you have to live anywhere in New York State to be a congressman in any of the districts in New York State. That's a constitutional issue. But I'm going to leave that aside. Going back to the petition, the difference here is the county legislature has a residency requirement in the Onondaga County Charter. The residency requirement says that if you're going to be running for county legislature, you have to be a resident of the district at time of nomination or filing petitions. And that's what happened here. Mr. Knapp was not a member of the district, and thus the challenge was accepted and he was thrown off the ballot. We then had the final person who was thrown off the ballot was Geddes Town Board GOP, Mr. Wynn, James Wynn. A judge ruled him off the ballot. This was not an objection from the Board of Elections, but it was an objection that went straight to court. And the reason it went to court is for voter fraud. And now voter fraud can be defined in many different ways. And sometimes voter fraud is not as nefarious as it may sound, and this is one of those cases. Here we had a case where Mr. Wynn, who was a first-time candidate, was running for office. He did not seek advice from the Board of Elections, and he wanted to create a petition that would put him on the ballot. Well, Mr. Wynn took the Republican town slate. See, he was running a primary against the Republican town slate. He did not get nominated by the Republicans, but he took the Republican town slate, removed the name of one of the candidates for town board, and inserted his own and started passing those petitions. Well, there is case law that says that if you are passing a slate petition without the permission of the other people on the slate, that is a version of voter fraud. It's deceiving the voters that you may be running as a ticket together, and you can get thrown off the ballot for that. Now, you can't do that at the Board of Elections. The reason you can't do that at the Board of Elections is that we have no subpoena power. We cannot actually bring people in and put them under oath and ascertain facts. That's the realm of the court, and that's why voter fraud is kept to the realm of the court. So that petition, the Judge Antonacci, who I agree with on his determination, said that, you know, because of the case law, because of the precedent, that Mr. Wynn has been thrown off the ballot, and he is no longer a candidate for GOP. You know, he could still go and do independent nominating petitions. That's still out there for all of these candidates that have been thrown off the ballot, and some have indicated they will. And we'll see by May 30th if their independent nominating petitions don't fall into the same categories and they're back on the ballot for the general election. Now, there are several candidates that stayed on the election after the hearings. Syracuse Common Council First District, there was objections made against Sean Reed. The objections claimed that there was a lot of voter fraud, again, in the ballot signatures that looked alike, that kind of stuff. Again, boards of elections cannot rule on that kind of stuff. That is the realm of the court. So we had to disagree with the objection. The objector had a chance to go to court and decided not to. So he is on the ballot. Common Council District, 3rd District, Woody Carroll, who's running for Republican Commission. Here is a case where the commissioners split on their ruling. And when a commissioner split on the ruling, usually we agree. On all these other cases, we agreed. On this one, we disagreed. And when we split on a ruling, that means the person stays on the ballot. And the ruling had to do with a witness. There was a witness that had a different address than what they were registered at. They put down an address on the witness statement that is different than the voter registration. And in that case, I believed the proper course for fixing that was an affidavit filed at the time of filing the petitions. Commissioner Sardo, citing some case law, said that that the affidavit that was provided by the witness during the hearing, saying that they do live at the new address, is adequate enough. I'll tell you that was a 50-50 jump ball, the situation. I went with what our County Board of Elections regulations and agreed upon ruling had from 2017, that the only way to fix this is to file an affidavit at filing petitions or to go to court. Commissioner Sardo disagreed with that in this case, citing some recent case law. So going forward, we'll probably allow these types of corrections at the hearings and keep these on the ballot. But I felt like we had this agreement, we had this regulation in place, it needed to be followed. But it's a local regulation, and there is a lot of case law that says that if a witness provides evidence that they actually resided somewhere else during the hearing process or during the court cases, that it's allowed. And to be quite honest, I don't like throwing people off the ballot anyways. So if over like technical issues like that. So in the future, we'll probably rule differently. Then the last two hearings that happened that had the same type of situation was the conservative petitions for the 127th judicial delegates and the conservative petitions for Salina Town Supervisor. In both those cases, the objector objected to a voter residence, one of the candidate on the 127th and one of a petition gatherer for the conservative Salina delegate. In the terms of a candidate, the person who was objected to had a dual residency. They lived half the time in Florida, half the time in New York. That is allowed in New York as long as you're not registered to vote another place and voting another place. The candidate agreed that, candidate provided some evidence that showed that he is, his home that he had here in New York was his primary residence, and without any other residence, or any other evidence, we kept him on the ballot. In the Salina conservative, it was the same thing, and here we had a little bit of a different situation. Here we had a witness that had recently left her home due to a divorce, but was still legally on the deed and in the middle of the divorce proceedings. New York State election law made it very clear that a temporary address, because or temporary living situation does not change your residency. And the witness put in an affidavit saying that they considered their address on file as their permanent address and will do so until the end of their divorce proceedings, and that was enough to keep that person on the ballot. And again, remember, the difference here with that and the Woody Carroll place is Woody Carroll situation is the witness put the correct address on there, but it was being challenged by the objector. And both of these situations have another thing in common. Voter registration challenges, and this is something that I've never come across, have to be done before the filing of petitions. And this is a unique, there's a lot of case law on this that says that once the Board of Elections has accepted a voter registration, that means they registered a vote and they've had a bipartisan check and in the system, you can do what's called a voter registration challenge. But that voter registration challenge has to happen before the filing of petitions, or before the start of circulating petitions, which was February 28th. Now, the voter registration challenge was actually done on one of these candidates, and but it was done after the filing date, so he couldn't deal with the petitions. But we went ahead with the official voter registration challenge as well, and that involved getting the sheriff involved. And the sheriff investigated for us, answered some questions, did a great job, got it done within 5 days, and we were able to keep that person on the voting rolls. And I'm not going to go into which one that was. It's because it's a hypothetical situation, but it's not hypothetical, but it's not public information, because this was part of the petition process. But we did a voter registration challenge for the first time, and we got the sheriff involved, and that was my first time as commissioner having to do something along those lines. So it doesn't happen often, thank God. But there was a lot of weird stuff going on this year with the hearings. So that's the wrap up of all the hearings that we had and the results and why we ruled the way they ruled. So we got you into a little bit of a background on this. So there you go. So this week, I'm actually changing things up a little bit. I was going to do a Czarny seminar on absentee ballot voting. I'm pushing that off till next week, because absentee ballots are going to go out next week, so I'm going to have the focus on absentee ballots next week. So my Zoom with Czarny on Thursday will be Blake Carter, who's running for County Legislative District 6. He's a new candidate and one of the few county leg candidates that are contested candidates. So my Zoom with Czarny this week will be an actual candidate interview with Blake Carter. So I'm changing this up a little bit. My seminar for absentee ballots will be next week. My weekly wonk, I posted this weekend the town of DeWitt. I'll be doing the village of Liverpool next weekend. And then finally, next Tuesday's Commissioner in the Car. We'll be coming back. I'll be coming back from Albany again, because I'm going back up to Albany to push for some legislation. And that's what I'll be talking about. It's the final legislative push for boards of elections, for election reform for 2023, as we got about 1 month until the end of session. So I'll be going up there pushing bipartisanly supported election reforms. So it's important to do that. In fact, I'm spending a lot of time, my own gas money, to do this, because I believe that it's the right thing to do. I'm going up there pretty much every Tuesday in May, because we have a final push to get this stuff done. But on next Tuesday, I'll give you 6 of our top priorities to get done for the end of session. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Commissioner in the Car, and make sure that you are staying safe And get ready for that big June 28th primary. It's coming your way. Absentee ballots are going to go out next week, at the end of next week, May 12th. So if you need an absentee ballot, go to onvote.net and you can apply through there for the June primary. Thank you very much, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.